Chipageddon. That sounds ominous. You've heard the stories, you've read the articles, massive worldwide shortage of chips. I actually kind of liked it as the world was finally talking about semiconductors. But how did this happen? Spoiler alert, there's not microchips in your vaccines. But what are the opportunities for startups out of this? I'm Matt Skinner, Chief Operating Officer at VentureLab. VentureLab is a leading global founder community for hardware and enterprise software startups and scale-ups located in York Region. It's just 20 minutes north of downtown Toronto. York Region is Canada's second largest tech hub. Last year, VentureLab launched the Hardware Catalyst Initiative. It's Canada's first and only lab and incubator for hardware and semiconductor-focused companies. Since launching the HCI, VentureLab has attracted more than 20 industry partners, including ARM. So thank you for your support. Hardware companies are facing many challenges. The first is a lack of support. There's many hubs that will help software companies, but few that focus purely on hardware. There's a barrier to getting access to test equipment. I myself was at a hardware startup several years ago. We went public in 2018, but before that, when we were testing our product, we didn't have access to this type of equipment. So we went on Kijiji and we bought a wine fridge, drilled some holes in it, pumped some nitrogen in it, and that's how we tested our CO2 sensors. Not really the right way. So we at VentureLab are trying to remove barriers so people can test their products the right way and invest in staff and R&D instead of equipment. Another barrier that we try to remove is access to funding. Hardware startups have a longer path to commercialization, and sometimes investors don't have the patience to do that. So we want to help make capital more accessible to hardware startups. There's three factors that caused Chipageddon. One, there was a change in consumer habits. Secondly, a surge in chip demand. And finally, a supply chain disruption. At the beginning of the pandemic, things changed quickly. There was less retail, more e-tail. There were less dinners out, more toilet paper. There were less flights, more medical devices like ventilators. Less trips to the movie theater and more video games and streaming at home. Less pants and more PCs for video conferencing. And in fact, PC demand grew by the most it has in over 10 years. And finally, as you can see here, there is more wine and beer consumed and less cars, with demand down for the auto sector more than 15% in 2020. There was a global surge in chip demand. We know almost every modern day technology requires chips beyond our cell phones and PCs, but into the cloud with AI products and ML chips. TSMC, who's the world's largest semiconductor fab, saw their demand and revenue increase sharply. And in fact, Q1 2021, their revenue was 80% higher than in Q1 2019. So a huge increase in demand. The changing consumer buying habits resulted in this surge in demand. And so then what happened? The problem is the industry couldn't catch up because of a lack of capacity in the supply chain and the lead time for chip orders. Let's take the auto sector as an example. As I said, in 2020, there was a decrease in demand of about 15%. Well, any good supply chain manager, they canceled their orders. But then demand came back and they tried to restart, but the challenge was the lead time was too long. And one of the things in the semiconductor industry is it's one of the longest supply chains of any product because it takes anywhere from 12 to 16 weeks to order and receive a chip. And during this demand surge, that lead time increased even further. End result, the auto chip manufacturers couldn't get those products, and now there's an auto shortage. I had a similar but reverse experience several years ago at AMD when cryptocurrency had its first surge. GPUs are great for gaming, but they're also a great parallel processor for crypto mining. And all of a sudden, miners bought all our GPUs in droves. And the sales guys came to us and said, we need more parts, we need more chips. So we ordered more. But several months later, the cryptocurrency prices crashed and demand dried up. All the chips we ordered 4 months previously started showing up. Same time the miners were selling off their used cars online at a discount, and we had an inventory problem. So what have we learned overall? Well, first of all, consumer spending and purchasing habits can change on a dime, and they can have a major impact on our supply chains. Everyone here knows semiconductors power almost everything today, but that was really news to some people. And finally, the semiconductor supply chain is complex. Semiconductors are hard. I see all of this as a huge opportunity for innovation. I don't view this as a supply problem, but as a demand opportunity. I do not see this semiconductor demand going away. This is a huge opportunity for hardware startups to take advantage. From advances in the semiconductor supply chain to increase efficiency, to startups creating new chips to solve problems we didn't even know we had just a few months ago. New areas for startups to pursue include medical devices, examples, semiconductor sensors to detect diseases, or remote presence for this virtual world, and IoT. We have startups at VentureLab who are creating innovation in the areas of low power machine learning and AI, autonomous platforms for non-automotive vehicles like greenhouse and warehouse vehicles. In this world where we're reducing human interaction, these vehicles are extremely valuable. One company has created a surgical viral aerosol ventilation and disinfection device. Wow, that sounds complicated, but it really is a device to keep ORs clear of viruses. And finally, local sustainable food production solutions. Startups have taken advantage of the increase in awareness of the impact of semiconductors to raise money or to be acquired. Nuvia, who opened their first international office at VentureLab, were recently acquired by Qualcomm for $1.4 billion. And there are other semiconductor companies in Canada who have recently completed significant raises. I think semiconductors are cool again. Finally, there are also opportunities right now for startups to take advantage of the support that hubs like VentureLab provide. And we don't do this alone. We rely on partners like ARM to help us get the job done. And overall, the ecosystem is committed to fueling economic recovery. Thank you.